Yeah, I love watching Charlize Theron as an action hero. She's able to tell story through physicality, so that the audience knows the character better at the end of the fight than they did at the beginning.
We're done.
Hi, I'm Chiwetel Ejiofor, and I'm talking about The Old Guard, which is on Netflix.
Has to be done quickly, by the best, and your team's the best I've ever seen. You can name your price.
So The Old Guard is about a group of mercenaries led by Charlize Theron, who are immortal. Yeah, I love watching Charlize Theron as an action hero. I think she's got this real skill in action. And it's because she's able to tell narrative through physicality. She's able to tell story through physicality, which is really hard. You have to know a fight really well to be able to put into the margins of the fight all of the character details that actually progress the story, so that the audience knows the character better at the end of the fight than they did at the beginning. Not because they've said anything, but because of the nature of how they've engaged in the physicality. And I think that is a great skill. And it's not, she utilizes that skill not just in this film, but she's done it for, she's been at it for a while now. And I've always been really impressed by her capacity to do that. I think it's just because she, is very, she's very physically skillful, but also I think she just works incredibly hard as well to really know the fights, to really know those sequences. So you never feel like the film stops and then there's an action sequence and then the film sort of carries on. It's just very integrated into the whole.
We're done.
You talked about telling stories through action. Could you speak about maybe how you did that in your action scenes in Doctor Strange?
So in Doctor Strange, I think that the Mordo in that capacity is really trying to get Strange up to speed, as in terms of the physicality, in terms of what he needs. There's a real kind of master and student relationship initially.
Fight like your life depended on it!
But then there's a subtext of a certain kind of neurosis that is also in the physicality. This idea that Mordo doesn't want to be surpassed. Mordo is worried about how he is about this new arrival. Mordo has these kinds of insecurities. So, the attempt is to do the fight, but also to try and communicate all of those aspects as well, so that not in a way that an audience has to really think about, but it is subtextual and it is in the physicality, and that I think that those are things that are sometimes quite complicated to do in fights. I suppose it's different in the sense that in Doctor Strange, that the principle of it, and I suppose the principle in the Marvel universe, is that all of these characters really relish to some degree all of their skills. In this world, in the Old Guard world, the Old Guard have a lot of trouble with their skill, with their ability. This idea of mortality and immortality is actually at times a real weight for them, and it opens up all of these philosophical questions and these kind of existential questions about life for this group of characters, which is fascinating.
Why did you do that? Get in the fucking car!
Yeah, the sequence in Children of Men in the car was all done over a sequence of days. It's edited together as one long take, but we were there doing that sequence for a little bit of time, and it was Emmanuel Lubetsky, who's the cinematographer, had built, there was a kind of rig that had been constructed where Emmanuel Lubetsky, or Chivo, was in the top and on top of the car with the roof taken off, and then Alfonso was up there as well, and the camera was on a kind of mechanism, and so would just roam around inside the car. But so my seat, I was driving the car, if I remember, and then my seat was on this hinge. So I would literally say a couple of lines, go back on this hinge, the camera would pass over my head, and then I'd come back up and carry on doing the scene and carry on talking. And so it was really finely choreographed, you know, for where the camera position was going to be, where all of the actors were going to be, so that the action was continuous, but was seemingly kind of impossible. Cinematographers who've been in the business for years come up to me and ask me how those sequences were achieved, because they were so intricate and sort of difficult to realize. And I always take huge credit for it, you know, even though I had very little to do with it. But I did go back on the hinge and come back and say my line. So I feel like I should take a little bit of credit, because I didn't give the game away. It was quite involved. It was also quite intense. You know, the windows were smashed. There was a whole kind of, some of that is in post, some of the kind of window breaking, but some of it really happened. I mean, it was happening on the day. And so I just remember it being quite full on. I mean, that whole shoot was like that, really. It was, you didn't really know what was coming sort of day to day. You know, any sequence that just seemed like, you know, they're fighting the army or whatever, could just be one line in the script, and you get down there and you're like, this is nuts. I think with Children of Men, what I love about it, sort of more than anything in a way, is the way that it's shot. I mean, I feel like the actual narrative is very prescient, but it was what was happening then as well. You know, yes, everything escalated in terms of migration, in terms of the conversation about borders, and the conversation about these kind of neurosis of keeping these little pockets of whatever people consider to be their own sense of reality. That kind of xenophobia and that fear of the other, I think was sort of certainly part of life when it was made, and it's only sort of increased in its power. I think that for me, there's something about the way that the film is shot that is so extraordinary in terms of the viewpoint. You know, that the fact the camera sticks with Clive Owen's character all the way through the film, but at a certain point it veers off and it looks at other things. It will show you, you know, people in cages, and it will show you somebody screaming or somebody being shot that Theo hasn't seen. And I think it was one of the first examples that I ever saw of a film that was that had a point of view, a POV narrative, but where that narrator, just the POV, was unreliable. Theo doesn't see things that the camera sees, and that's really important. You can't trust him to see the world as it is.